It's book review time. It's book review time. Hi, if you are watching on YouTube, welcome to Everything Mackenzie and Macked the podcast. If you are just listening to the audio version, welcome to Macked the podcast. I'm your host, Marlies Mackenzie, and I am excited to be bringing you this book review. So now you might be thinking, why am I now moving my book reviews to my podcasts? Well, essentially, it's because the book review I want to do today led me to thinking that most of the lines I want to touch on, or most of the lines that were highlighted for me, are just singular speaking points, essentially things that I could just talk about and focus on that one thing. So right now, what could happen, I sort of have a plan for this book review, but I might also just be freestyling along the way because, like I said, most of these things are single issue type things that I feel like I could expand more on, but then I also want to keep the traditional style of a book review, because then if I don't do that, is it really a book review? Anyway, if you're wondering why I am holding my mic like this, I either left my tripod thing, the holder, at home, or I lost it, because the last time I saw it was on Sunday. Now that I'm recording this video and this audio, it is yesterday. I don't know when this is going up, but as soon as possible. So yeah, I last saw it. Let's just say I last saw it when I came back. So yeah, we're gonna do a book review on Finding Me by Viola Davis. One thing I really enjoy about book reviews is that they aren't like movie reviews or series reviews and all of that, because books are timeless. They could be relevant in any time. While everyone right now is reading Spare, you could still have a book on Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So literally, that's the one thing I really like about book reviews. There's a fly here and it's flippin' annoying. Anyway, back to the book review by Viola Davis, Finding Me. I got the book as a birthday present from, okay, this fly is really gonna annoy me. So, I got this book as a gift from a friend for my birthday last year, July, or rather should I say for my, how old am I? For my 20th. Oh my word, I thought I was 19 in my head. Oh my word, I thought I was 19. Anyway, for my 20th. Okay, yeah, after recording this, I'm really gonna have to process. I got this for my 20th. I got it for my 20th. And the book was bought at Exclusive Books. It's retailing, I think, still, if it isn't on sale yet, if the price hasn't went down. It's retailing for 363 rand. And I mean, you can find it anywhere, really. You can find it anywhere. It was published by Coronet books. Essentially, the book is about Viola Davis, who most people know as Annalise Keating from How to Get Away with Murder. It's basically about how she ran away from poverty and how she also grew, or rather blossomed, into a confident Black woman because of the whole racial stereotypes, racial oppression, poverty being a disease, and all of that. And it's also one thing that annoys me. The particular thing that annoys me is how everyone has a poverty story. But then, in a sense, I remember I was having a conversation actually with a friend of mine last night on how as Black people, we've been oppressed for so long that poverty is just honestly part of our story, part of our journey. It's very rare that you find Black people who didn't have to struggle with poverty because they were already born into richness, because they're trust fund babies and all of that. Because I was having a conversation, I was like, this book really triggered me in a sense that I feel as though I am about to finally tell my story, tell my truth. Because what I haven't really let people in on my story, the hardships I faced. But then another reason for that is because I just feel that I'm really not that special. I feel that everyone else has their own struggles, and that I can't just keep looking on the negative. So it's a matter of like, you need to realize that talking about your story doesn't necessarily mean you are complaining, doesn't necessarily mean that you're looking for pity and all of that. It's just a matter of like telling your story, and what the next person does with that information is totally up to them. So that is essentially what was going on. But then I just want to read from the back of the book, for basically in her own words. So what she says is that, or rather it reads as follows. In my book, you will meet a little girl named Viola, who ran from her past until she made a life-changing decision to stop running. This is my story, from a crumbling apartment in Central Falls, Rhode Island, to the stage in New York City and beyond. This is the path I took to finding my purpose, but also my voice in a world that didn't always see me. As I wrote Finding Me, my eyes were open to the truth of how our stories are often not given close examination. We are forced to reinvent them to fit into a crazy, competitive, judgmental world. So I wrote. I wrote this for anyone running through life untethered, desperate, and clawing their way through murky memories, trying to get to some form of self-love. For everyone who needs reminding that a life worth living can only be born from radical honesty and the courage to shed facades and be you. Finding Me is a deep reflection, a promise, and a love letter of sorts to self. My hope is that my story will inspire you to light up your own life with creative expression and rediscover who you were before the world put a label on you. Very powerful. I just had to read that in her own words. So as traditional book reviewing standards go, there has to be something you like about the book. There has to be something you did not like about the book. And I could like just make a list of everything I loved about the book and everything I didn't love about the book, and essentially this is it. It's just not going to follow any particular order. So what I particularly liked about the book, like I said, is that it triggered these emotions in me that I felt that it was now, or rather that it is now my time to tell my story, or that while I am creating this profile or this brand for myself, I am getting closer to the dream. But with getting closer to the dream, that also means letting go of what I'm holding on to. And sometimes you don't realize that you're holding on to things, and you think that because you aren't talking about them, because nothing triggers those emotions, because you don't have environments where you just start talking about that, or you've never really considered it a problem, now you don't really realize that you are holding on to things. And part of growing also means shedding off some skin, and basically shedding off that skin is unlearning some things, learning some things, changing your mentality, changing the way you talk to be more positive, and all of that, just basically evolving as a human person. So I want to get into the book. So I have a couple of like pages highlighted. So every page with a sticker is a line that I wanted to read. There's actually some with like full paragraphs, sentences, and all of that. But then I figured it's going to be very lengthy. So I would really, if you haven't read the book yet and you enjoy this book review, I would honestly urge you to read this book out. If you're on Wisdom, you can check out Marlies McKenzie. I am also going to change that to Mact, the podcast, So I have spent hours on wisdom and read this book to an audience. So because it was really, and also one thing about also reading it to an audience was so that I could also finish the book essentially, because sometimes when people are looking at you, you tend to do things better, which is one thing. Like when I start receiving praises, I get a bit nervous because I feel that I might fail, and that also says a lot about me psychologically, but that's not something I am trying to get into. I don't know if that means I'm avoiding my problems. I don't think so, but we'll see. So this is page 7 and the title is Running. This is exactly, I think, chapter 1. Is it chapter 1? Let's see. I think it exactly is chapter 1, Running, and it makes sense that it is running. So yeah, it's chapter 1. And she says that memories are immortal, they are deathless and precise. They have the power of giving you joy and perspective in hard times, or they can strangle you, define you in a way that's based more in others' tucked up perceptions than truth. Now I want to talk about that. Right now you'll see eventually why I felt that everything is essentially a whole podcast on its own. Is because it again also goes back to what I just said now about how you have to let go of other things as you evolve. Is that we have memories that we hold on to. We have memories that we've forgotten. I think those are called repressed memories, and it's also a thing in psychology. It's a coping mechanism. I just happen to be forgetting, not to being able to recall others, but then some memories we deliberately forget, and as we deliberately forget them, they now are part of our subconscious. That's why we sometimes we get so triggered and we don't know why that particular thing is triggering us. So it also brings me back to a point where the same thing we say about thoughts and how they have the power to make us or destroy us, essentially memories have the power to make us or destroy us, because we also have to realize that memories aren't just always good memories. Oftentimes when you talk about good memories, we look at it from a single standpoint or a single point of view, and we don't consider negative memories. So whenever we say, I understand saying that we're creating memories means that we're creating positive memories, but we also there's also something, that heartbreak you experienced, that is a memory. It's a negative memory. It's just a matter of what you choose to do with that. And then she also goes on to talk about how they can strangle you and define you in a way that's based more in other people's tucked up perceptions. Is, I think, in a sense, it probably has a much deeper meaning than what I am thinking of, but it somewhat reminds me of, you know how whenever you're at home, your parents would tell you stories about what you used to do and all of that. And now, one thing about me is my mom says that I used to be a very bubbly person, and I mean, I still am a bubbly person. It's just a matter of I used to be the one dancing and all of that, the center of attraction, of which I still am, except right now I am doing that differently, because now I think I have found, I don't necessarily want to say my niche, but I think I have found what I excel in rather. And now it's a matter of that perception that she has of me now has somewhat, it seems as though I have changed and I'm no longer that person, but because she remembers that, and now that that whole information is now transferred to me, because you have to realize that speaking is basically like codes, right? It translates from my ears, it translates differently in my brain and my logic, and now my behavior, because of the brain, is going to start, I'm going to try to mold myself into that particular person as well, because that's who I used to be. And the moment you start thinking about that, and sometimes it's not even a thing that is so obvious or rather voluntary, it's literally your brain acting on its own. And now you start molding yourself, which isn't always necessarily a bad thing, but then it also just kind of contradicts the whole change thing, the whole growth thing, because you are not the same person you were before you slept the night before this day. So essentially that is that. Okay, I think that was pretty deep, although I said I think she had a much deeper definition, or rather meaning for what she wanted to say. And then this was still on page 7. She says, I wanted so badly to fit into this world, but instead I was being spit out like vomit. When I read this, I thought of uniculture and what I've seen people go through, and also how I've changed as well, and how most people think that I have changed as a result of university or a result of being away from home. But I think this is just a general human thing with regards to evolving, with regards to being social beings and having the necessity to be accepted in whatever societies we exist in. And for me, the one that came most close was honestly just uniculture, and how we find a lot of people. We have a lot of societies, or rather, let me say, communities in university, right? I think that is the best example I could use, but it's not limited to that. Is that you have your different groups, the groups who would be partying, your praise and worship Jesus babies. You have your political groups, you have your library groups, you have all these various communities in university or on campus. You meet all these types of people, and now you would find that some people are trying to be in all of them, of which some personalities are adaptive like that. They can exist in all these communities. But then it's a matter, what I'm essentially getting at is, a lot of times, a lot of us try to get into these groups, fit in with these people, fit in with these other crowds, because we are trying to look cool. We are trying to be perceived as a cool person. And there's honestly nothing wrong with being different. I get told a lot that I am weird. I get told a lot that I am a nerd. And I'm like, actually, I am befitting of all those things. And weird is not negative. Whoever decided that weird is negative, what even is normal? What even is normal, really? So it's essentially those type of things. Like, people try and mold themselves into what they see. I think another example could be how everyone is getting BBLs, because the Kim Kardashian had a BBL and all of that. So now they're trying to look like her because it's the cool thing, because at some point she was declared the world's sexiest woman, or whatever, the standard of beauty. So it's literally those type of things. And you are constantly being spit out. You are being spit out because your spirit does not sit well with what you are doing, because you are being convicted. But because you have been so diluted and so mixed in these other stuff, you are not able to discern that, and you are not able to listen to your conviction, because you're so deep into whatever it is that you're doing. Essentially, there was no need for me to go that deep about it, but I think it was necessary. So yeah, that was essentially page 7. Then finally finally, that's not so final, on page 83, I actually had like a few couple pages, but then I was like, it's alright, man, it's alright, because now literally I would be reading this whole book, or rather making points on everything in this book. So before I actually get to page 83, I actually skipped a page. It is page 77. It says that success pales in comparison to healing. So I feel like it's also another thing in my generation, and not even just in my generation, but like in the world today, really, where we feel that money is everything. And honestly, I somewhat am also one of those people guilty of that I feel that money will lessen my problems, of which it's definitely true. Money will lessen my problems, but you also need to heal. We need to understand that having money does not mean you're already healed. No, having money means that now you are able to deal better with whatever situation you're finding yourself in. You're able to pay for your health. You are able to fund whatever it is that you need to fund. But then basically you still need to do the inner work. You still need to heal on the inside. And I think another example besides what we can look at, besides blessers being maybe just men who are just looking to like have sex with young girls and all of that, I think another thing that we can look at and that we can use as an example is exactly that, in the sense that it most likely is a matter, it most likely is a matter of those people now being in a situation where they're now able to afford these things, but because they had previously not done the inner work before they got the money, they now don't need to do, they now don't know how to work about that. Hence often get told that now boys will always be boys, men will always be men. That is not the case. Or like, no, they're bored, they don't know what to do with the money, they have a lot of money. It might be the case for some people, but it's definitely not the case for all of them. So it's a matter of once you get, and not even once you get to the point where you want to get financially or whatever success is for you, you are a work in progress. You will never be completely healed, but every day is working towards healing. It's how we carry all this baggage that we carry, but we are able to live. So it's a matter of like, don't just be a person who survives, but strive to be a person who realizes that yes, I have my flaws, but I am still growing into a better person. So I am not trying to have this podcast and this video be long. So what I'm gonna do is, because I really have more things, I have more things, hey, I have more things, I have a lot to say. That's why I said that most of these things are podcasts on their own. What I'm gonna do is, I'm not gonna allow this video to exceed 35 minutes, 40 minutes. I just don't want it to be long enough, because I feel that TikTok has ruined a lot of people's attention span. And also I know that there are people who also appreciate my long videos, and there are people who also appreciate my short videos, and some who obviously don't. But because I really want to be intentional as I go through this book review, I want to be more intentional than I am aiming, essentially. So I'm gonna go through the last one or the last two, and then I'm going to continue with this in the next episode. So it says, this is finally page 83, like I was saying. Remember, I almost skipped 77. So she says, but even some of the mightiest of warriors have wounds that leave them debilitated. Essentially, put short, check on your strong friends. Whenever you've read check on your strong friends, this is essentially what it's saying, because it's essentially saying that even the strongest of people, even those strong friends you have, they also have wounds that have probably led them to suicidal ideation. They have had wounds that had left them dealing with depression. They have had wounds that they thought they could never recover from, and even probably right now they still have that one wound, that one memory that whenever they look back upon, they think of how different their life could have been now. They think of how tragic that was and how much trauma that has caused them. Some people have wounds that now have them paying therapy bills because that one thing hurt them that much. So that is just that put short. And then this is the last one for today that I am going to be reading for you and just basically telling you my takeaway. She says, but when I found myself in college, I still could not give myself permission to do the things that I loved. This again goes back to poverty. It goes back to the conversation I was having with my friend. It goes back to the podcast. It actually really somewhat goes back to the podcast I have on my transition from uni to university. It goes back to the thing I was talking about trying to fit in. It literally just goes back to everything that I've been saying. And mainly it goes back to poverty, because now if you're in a position where you now have freedom, you now have access to things, and you could literally, your life, basically in a position where your life could be easier than what it was, or less difficult than what it was, but because you're still in that position, or rather in that mindset, you can't give yourself permission to experience these things, because you're still holding onto that narrative, onto that mindset that you have. I have a couple of examples that I could use. The first example could be how a person who has struggled for a very long time financially, the moment they finally get money, they buy the cheapest things. Because they buy in bulk, they stockpile, because they're scared that the following day they might not have those things again. An example could also be members of the government or the parliament who are greedy, who are corrupt, and who are holding on to the country's wealth because they are scared that they might run out of these things, that they might lose these things. So they never really feel secure enough because of the hardships that they have endured. Another example of this could be how maybe you've grown out of shrinking, or rather being taught to think in a certain manner and be a certain type of person, and now you're also growing and coming into yourself, and now you just can't allow yourself to experience things. You can't allow yourself to learn about other things because of the values that have been instilled in you, which are good values, which are positive values, but we hold on to those because, or rather, we don't give ourselves permission to experience anything other than what we have not been taught, because we feel that we are going astray. We feel that we are leaving that, and that we are betraying ourselves, and that we are betraying those who have taught us, essentially. So that was the final thing. But then, just in closing, I just want to say that I don't like that we all have a poverty story. I genuinely wish I could also, one day when I blow up, I'm waiting for my overnight success. You see what I'm doing right now? What I'm doing right now with these YouTube videos, with the poetry, with the writing, with everything, it's all going to turn into an overnight success. But do you see how that overnight success is going to look? That overnight success is going to look exactly like this. I'm going to forget, or rather people aren't going to take note of the hard work that had went into this until they actually go back and look at this. It's going to be like, where was this person? Where did she come from? Type of thing. So essentially, I feel like that's not what I actually wanted to say, but then I ended up saying that. But then essentially, poverty is a disease. Poverty, that was my watch. Poverty is a disease. Poverty is a sin. No, really, I think poverty is a sin. But I'm just gonna leave it there. It's just really sad that like most of us experience these things and that they become testimonies. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video on YouTube, give us a like, give us a share and subscribe. Also, if you are listening on any podcast platforms, please do go onto the YouTube and subscribe. Please go onto the YouTube and subscribe. Please go onto the YouTube and subscribe. And if you are watching this on YouTube, please go onto your podcast platforms and give me a following. Please go onto your podcast platforms and give me a rating. Please go onto your podcast platforms, specifically Apple Podcasts in this case, for a review. You can literally write me suggestions. You can literally write me whatever you say, like they usually say on Shits and Nicks. Whatever you say it with your chest. So essentially, that is all. I hope that you will enjoy my whole rebranding phase and just continue growing with me. Right now, I just figured that with regards to the whole intro thing, I don't think I'm gonna try and put like a lot of emphasis on intros. I have tried like getting some couple of intros. I'm just not really vibing with them, but then I'm gonna allow it to come naturally. I am gonna allow it to come naturally. So thank you so much for tuning in to Mact the podcast and for checking out my YouTube, Everything Mackenzie. From me, it's all love, folks. It's all love, it's all positivity, it's all vibes, it's chilled, man. It's chill. It's love. It's love, it's godliness. It's just love, man. General love. And I'm sending you all Bluetooth hugs. I hope you are doing well. If you're not doing well, I hope that the sun shines on you soon. Sending you all much love and light. It's been nice having you. From Mact.